We're just protecting your money, Dad. Daniel said it softly, like he was reminding me to take my vitamins. He stood at the edge of my dining table, holding a manila folder I hadn't seen before. Melissa leaned against the kitchen counter, arms crossed, watching me as if this were a medical consultation instead of a family conversation. I was 72 years old. I had spent 4 decades in forensic accounting, identifying misstatements that other people missed. And my son was explaining financial safety to me. Protecting it from what? I asked calmly. You've been more forgetful lately, Melissa said. You almost double paid that contractor. I reconciled the invoice before the second check cleared, I replied. That's not the point, Daniel said quickly. It's about prevention. Prevention is persuasive. It makes resistance sound irresponsible. He opened the folder and slid a document toward me. This is a durable power of attorney. It just lets me step in if something ever happens. If what happens? I asked. If you get sick, or confused, or anything. The word dementia was never spoken, but it sat in the room anyway. Margaret had been gone 3 years. Cancer had taken her quickly, efficiently. After her death, Daniel and Melissa began visiting more often. At first it felt supportive, then it felt supervisory. Have you reviewed your allocation lately? Yes. Do you still remember your passwords? Yes. Concern repeated often, enough becomes oversight. This doesn't take control away from you, Daniel insisted. You're still in charge. I read every line. Durable, immediate authority, broad financial powers, revocable. Why immediate? I asked. In case something unexpected happens. What kind of unexpected? You forgot Aunt Linda's birthday. For 3 hours, I replied. He gave a tight smile. That's how it starts. Age is frequently used as evidence. I signed. Not because I doubted myself. Because I trusted my son. Trust, I've learned, is not the same as permission. The first transfer was $4,800. I noticed it reviewing my checking account one morning. Funds moved into a new savings account linked under Daniel's name. I called him. Oh, that, he said casually. I moved it so I can monitor expenses easier. You can monitor without moving funds. It's still your money. That wasn't the agreement. You said you trusted me. I do, I said, but trust requires transparency. He promised to move it back. He didn't. 3 days later, another transfer appeared, $9,600. When I called again, irritation had replaced reassurance. It's temporary. For what purpose? Melissa needed a new car. Nearly $10,000. Some went toward the down payment. You didn't ask. I didn't need to. I have authority. Authority. That word changed the temperature in the room. You have responsibility, I corrected, not ownership. Silence. Then the justification began. You're being paranoid. No, I said quietly. I'm being precise. Over the next month, 3 additional transfers occurred. $7,200, $12,500, $8,900, each labeled family support. My financial history was consistent for years. Mortgage, utilities, insurance, brokerage contributions, modest discretionary spending. Suddenly, tens of thousands were moving irregularly. I drove to First County Bank. Sandra Whittaker had managed the branch for nearly a decade. She knew my history. What else happened? She asked as we sat in her office. I handed her printed statements. He has durable power of attorney, she confirmed. Yes. Executed while you were competent. Yes. Then technically, he has transactional authority. Technically, I repeated. She reviewed the highlighted transfers carefully. Agents under POA have fiduciary duty, she said. They must act in your best interest. Would personal expenses qualify? If not directly benefiting you and without consent, it raises concerns. What happens when concerns are raised? Compliance reviews patterns. If activity deviates significantly from established behavior, fraud monitoring flags it. Would this qualify? It might. Documentation does not argue, it records. 2 days later, I received an automated notice. Unusual activity detected. Please contact branch representative. I scheduled a meeting. Sandra and a compliance officer sat across from me. Mr. Bennett, the officer began, we've identified multiple high-value transfers inconsistent with your historical spending pattern. Were these authorized? Not with my explicit consent. Were funds used primarily for your benefit? No. Sandra folded her hands. If an agent uses POA authority for personal gain without principal approval, that may constitute fiduciary breach. What does that mean practically? I asked. We freeze the agent's transactional authority pending review. And my access? Unaffected, you retain full control. Relief is quieter than anger. Daniel's access was suspended that afternoon. He called within the hour. They froze me out. I'm aware. Did you tell them I was stealing? I told them I didn't authorize the transfers. You signed the POA. Yes, I said evenly, not a blank check. You're humiliating me. No, I replied. I'm correcting you. There was a long pause. You don't understand the pressure we're under, he said finally. The debt, the failed investment. I understand pressure, I replied. I do not understand entitlement. He hung up. Melissa texted later. This is tearing the family apart. I stared at the message before responding. Misuse of trust tears families apart. Accountability reveals it. The compliance review continued. Receipts were requested. Documentation was incomplete. Explanations shifted. The freeze remained. When Daniel came over that weekend, his tone had hardened. You don't trust your own son. I trusted you, I said calmly. That's why this hurts. We're just protecting your money. And who protects it from you? I asked quietly. He had no answer. That was when I understood something clearly. This was never about cognitive decline. It was about access. Access granted. Access assumed. Access expanded. I did not revoke the POA immediately. Not yet. Because something else was happening. Something Daniel didn't anticipate. It wasn't coming from me. It wasn't coming from the bank. It was coming from someone who had no legal authority at all. My granddaughter, Emily. And when she asked one simple question at dinner, the entire narrative began to shift. The freeze on Daniel's access stayed in place for 2 weeks. During that time, he didn't call. He didn't visit. He didn't text. The silence was almost worse than the confrontation because silence allows imagination to fill in the gaps. Sandra called me on a Tuesday morning. The compliance review is complete, she said. We've identified 6 transfers totaling over $47,000 that do not align with your established spending patterns or personal benefit. What happens next? I asked. The findings are being documented. If you choose to pursue it, this could support a formal fiduciary breach complaint. What would that mean? It would mean the agent is determined to have acted against the principal's interest. It could affect his standing under the POA. I thanked her and hung up. $47,000. It wasn't a fortune, but it wasn't the amount that mattered. It was the pattern. Daniel hadn't made one mistake. He had made 6 decisions. I sat at my dining table with the compliance summary Sandra had emailed. Each transfer was listed with dates, amounts, and the vague justifications Daniel had provided. Personal loan repayment, car down payment, debt consolidation, emergency family support. The language was careful. It always is. That afternoon, I called my attorney, Elaine Porter. She had handled Margaret's estate and helped structure my living trust. "Elena," I said when she answered, "I need to discuss revoking a power of attorney." "Who holds it?" "My son." A brief pause. "Has there been misuse?" "Yes, documented." "How severe?" 47,000 in unauthorized transfers over 3 months. She exhaled slowly. "That's significant." "What do I need to do?" "Draft a revocation notice. Sign it before 2 witnesses. Deliver it to him directly and file copies with every financial institution where you hold accounts." "Will that stop further transfers?" "Immediately, but it may escalate the personal conflict." "It's already escalated," I said quietly. We scheduled an appointment for Thursday morning. Before I could deliver the revocation, Daniel showed up at my house unannounced. It was Wednesday evening, just after sunset. His car pulled into the driveway, and I watched him sit there for almost a minute before getting out. When I opened the door, he looked tired. "Can we talk?" he asked. "You should have called." "I know." We sat in the living room, the same room where he'd first handed me the POA paperwork weeks earlier. "The bank won't speak to me anymore," he began. "I know. They said there's a compliance review." "There is. They think I was exploiting you." "Were you?" He looked at me sharply. "No, I was managing things." "Moving $47,000 without asking isn't management," I said. "It's extraction." He flinched at that word. "I was going to pay it back." "When?" "Soon." "When is soon?" "I don't know." The truth, when it finally arrives, is often simpler than the explanations that preceded it. "I lost money on a business investment," he admitted, "a restaurant franchise. It collapsed 6 months ago. And you used my accounts to cover the losses. I thought if I could stabilize things, you'd never need to know. So you hid it. I protected you from worrying. You protected yourself from consequences." He didn't argue. That was the first honest moment we'd had in months. "I'm revoking the power of attorney," I said calmly. His face tightened. "You can't do that." "I can. I signed it. I can revoke it." "Dad, listen." "I've listened for 3 months. I've listened while you explain transfers I didn't authorize and expenses I didn't approve. I was trying to help our family. By taking from your father. By managing things temporarily. Temporary requires consent. Temporary requires transparency. You provided neither." He stood up abruptly. "You're punishing me." "No," I said quietly. "I'm protecting myself. There's a difference." He left without saying goodbye. The next morning, I met Elaine at her office. She had prepared a simple 1-page revocation document. "This terminates the durable power of attorney immediately," she explained. "Once signed and delivered, his authority ends." I read every line, old habits. Then I signed. 2 witnesses from Elaine's office signed as well. "Make copies," Elaine advised. "Deliver one to him directly. File copies with First County Bank, your brokerage, and any other institution where you hold assets." "Will this trigger anything?" only that his access is permanently revoked. Institutions are legally obligated to honor the revocation. I delivered the document to Daniel in person that afternoon. He stood in his doorway reading it, his expression unreadable. "You actually did it," he said quietly. "I told you I would. This feels like betrayal." "No," I said. "This is accountability. Betrayal happened months ago." Melissa appeared behind him. "We were trying to protect you." "You keep using that word," I replied. "But protection doesn't require secrecy." She looked away. "The compliance report is being filed," I added. "I'm not pursuing formal charges, but the revocation stands." Daniel folded the paper. "What happens now?" "Now," I said calmly, "you learn the difference between authority and permission." I walked back to my car and drove away. The revocation was filed with the bank that same week. Sandra confirmed receipt. "He no longer has any access," she said. "Full control returns to you." "Thank you." "Mr. Bennett," she added carefully, "I've seen this before. Family members think authority means ownership. They're almost always wrong." Almost always. I spent the following weeks rebuilding. I reviewed every account statement. I updated every password. I added secondary verification on all brokerage transfers. My finances were solid. My investments were stable. Years of careful management had absorbed the losses. But the emotional cost was harder to calculate. Daniel's narrative spread through the extended family. He told relatives that I was erratic, forgetful, and paranoid, that the bank had overreacted, that he had only been trying to help. My cousin Linda called one evening. "Is it true you revoked the power of attorney?" "Yes." "Daniel says you're struggling with memory issues." "I'm not." He sounded so convincing. "He has practice." She hesitated. "I want to believe you." "Then believe the documentation," I said. "Believe the bank. Believe the compliance report." "I'll try." Try. Doubt is difficult to unring once it's been struck. Over the following weeks, I felt the subtle shift. Family events became strained. Conversations paused when I entered rooms. Questions were asked more slowly. "Are you okay, Uncle Tom?" "I'm fine." "You seem tired." "I'm 72. Age becomes evidence when suspicion is planted. But suspicion cuts both directions. Because while Daniel was telling his version to family, someone else was asking questions of her own. Emily was 15 years old. She didn't care about power of attorney or fiduciary duty. She just knew her grandfather had stopped coming to dinner. And when she asked her father why, he gave her an answer she didn't believe. So she did what teenagers do. She started looking. Emily did not come to me first. She went to the internet. Teenagers trust search engines more than conversations. She typed in power of attorney rules and read for hours. She learned that an agent must act in the principal's best interest. She learned that using funds for personal benefit without consent could be exploitation. She learned that banks are required to report suspicious activity. Then she did something Daniel did not anticipate. She asked for numbers. "Dad," she said one night at dinner, "how much money did you move from Grandpa's account?" Daniel froze for half a second. "That's not your business." "It kind of is," she replied. "You told Aunt Linda Grandpa wasn't safe with money." Melissa shifted uncomfortably. "Emily, this is adult stuff." "Then why did you tell everyone about it?" she asked. Silence has a sound when truth is about to surface. "How much?" she pressed again. Daniel sighed. It was temporary. "That's not a number." Melissa reached for her water glass. "Around 40,000. Emily blinked. 40,000. It was going to be paid back. Did Grandpa say you could? Daniel didn't answer immediately. He signed the power of attorney. That's not what I asked. Children are dangerous when they refuse to accept deflection. Did he say you could move it? She repeated. No, Daniel admitted. The room changed temperature. Emily didn't shout. She didn't cry. She just nodded slowly. That's not protection, she said quietly. That's taking. Melissa stood up abruptly. You don't understand how complicated finances are. I understand math, Emily replied, and that sounds wrong. The next afternoon, she showed up at my door alone. I opened it and saw something determined in her expression. Can I come in? She asked. Of course. We sat at the dining table, the same table where Daniel had first presented the POA. Dad said you revoked it, she began. I did. Did he move money without asking? Yes. How much? 47,000. She inhaled sharply. Why didn't you tell everyone? I prefer documentation to arguments. She nodded slowly. I think he's scared, she said. Of what? That you'll stop loving him. I leaned back in my chair. Love and trust are not the same currency. I don't stop loving people, I said. I adjust access. She considered that carefully. He told people you were forgetting things, she continued. But you're not. No. Then why would he say that? Because concern sounds kinder than desperation. She was quiet for a long moment. Grandpa, she said finally, can I see the statements? I hesitated. Not because I doubted her. Because numbers carry weight. But clarity matters more than comfort. I retrieved the compliance summary from my file cabinet and placed it in front of her. She read slowly. 6 transfers. Dates. Amounts. Notations from the bank. Her jaw tightened. He said it was 5,000, she whispered. It was. She looked up at me. I'm going to talk to him. Be careful, I said gently. I will. Teenagers don't fear conflict the way adults do. They haven't accumulated enough regret yet. That evening, she confronted him again. I wasn't there, but she told me later how it went. You lied, she said plainly. I didn't lie, Daniel insisted. You said 5,000. It started that way. Then why did you say Grandpa was confused? He was making mistakes. What mistakes? Silence. Dad, she said softly, did you say that so people wouldn't question you? He didn't answer immediately. That silence was answer enough. Over the next week, something unexpected happened. Relatives began calling me again. Not cautiously. Directly. Tom, my brother said, Emily told us what really happened. She did. She showed us the documentation. I hadn't given her copies. She had taken photos on her phone. I see, I said calmly. She's sharper than we gave her credit for. Yes, I replied, she is. Narratives unravel quickly when numbers enter the conversation. Sandra called me again that Friday. I heard from a few customers, she said carefully. Word travels. It does. I wanted you to know the compliance department closed the review. Official determination, fiduciary misuse, funds categorized as personal benefit without authorization. Is that documented? Yes. Will it be reported? It's on file internally. No criminal referral since you declined to pursue it. I'm not interested in prosecution, I said. I'm interested in boundaries. Then you handled it appropriately. That word again. Appropriate. Vindication rarely feels dramatic. It feels procedural. Daniel came to my house 3 days later. He didn't knock. He stood on the porch until I opened the door. "You told her," he said immediately. "No," I replied. "She asked." "You let her see the statements?" "Yes. She's 15. She's honest." He looked exhausted. "She thinks I stole from you." "Did you?" "I was going to pay it back." "When?" "I don't know." He ran a hand through his hair. "I didn't think it would spiral like this. It spiraled when you said I wasn't safe with my own money." He looked down. "I was embarrassed," he admitted. "The business failed. I didn't want people thinking I couldn't provide." "So you let them think I couldn't." The truth is heavy when spoken without anger. "I messed up," he said quietly. "Yes." He swallowed. "I told everyone you were confused." "I know. I thought if they believed that, they wouldn't question the transfers." "There it is," I said softly. "Manipulation often masquerades as protection." He sat down at the dining table without asking. "I don't know how to fix this." "You start with honesty." "I just gave you honesty." "No," I said. "You gave me confession. Honesty includes restitution." He looked up sharply. "I don't have $47,000. You don't need it today." He waited. "You need a plan." For the first time in months, we were speaking about responsibility instead of accusation. "I can set up automatic repayment," he said slowly. $500 a month. "That will take years." "I know. Years are not frightening when you're used to discipline." "I'll consider it," I said. He nodded. "And you'll tell the family the truth," I added. "I will. Not I'll try. Not I'll think about it. I will." That mattered. Over the next month, Daniel began making restitution payments. Small at first. Then consistent. $750. $1,000. He sent screenshots each time. Documentation. I didn't praise him. I recorded it. Melissa called me one afternoon. "I'm sorry," she said without preface. "For what specifically?" "For pushing him to sign the POA, for encouraging the transfers, for saying you weren't safe." "Why did you?" She hesitated. "We were drowning," she admitted, "and you had life rafts." "I had savings." "We thought family meant access." "Family means accountability," I replied. She didn't argue. Emily continued visiting on Sundays. We drank tea and talked about school. One afternoon she said, "Grandpa, are you going to forgive him?" "I already have." She blinked. "You have?" "Yes." "Then why does he still look scared?" "Because forgiveness doesn't erase consequences." That seemed to satisfy her. By the time autumn arrived, the story had shifted. Not because I argued louder. Because documentation was stronger. Because a bank paused. Because a teenager asked for numbers. And because truth, once printed, is difficult to ignore. But reconciliation requires more than repayment. It requires humility. And Daniel had not yet reached that part. Not fully. That would come later. And when it did, it wouldn't arrive with apologies. It would arrive with something quieter, something harder, and something earned. Humility rarely announces itself. It doesn't arrive with a speech or a dramatic apology. It shows up in small, unglamorous decisions repeated consistently over time. By November, Daniel had repaid just under $9,000. Every transfer came with a short message. November repayment. Extra from bonus. Sold equipment. No emojis, no explanations. Just documentation. I updated my ledger each time. Numbers don't hold grudges. They simply record movement. One Saturday morning, Daniel knocked on my door carrying a cardboard box. "I found these in storage," he said. Inside were Margaret's old financial binders, investment summaries, handwritten notes, quarterly balance sheets she and I used to review together at the kitchen table. "You kept them?" I asked. "I almost threw them out," he admitted. "Then I remembered how seriously you took this stuff." I lifted one binder carefully. Margaret's handwriting was still neat and precise. "You taught me how to balance a checkbook when I was 12, Daniel said quietly. "I forgot that." "No," I replied. "You remembered, you just didn't respect it." He nodded. There was no defensiveness in him that morning, just fatigue and something closer to understanding. "Emily won't let me dodge anything," he added with a faint smile. "She won't," I agreed. Teenagers are relentless when truth is simple. That afternoon, we sat together reviewing my brokerage statements, not because I needed help, because he asked to see how I structured withdrawals for tax efficiency. "I want to learn," he said. "Then listen." For 2 hours, I explained dividend timing, capital gains implications, and allocation strategy. He asked thoughtful questions. He wrote notes. This was different. Not control. Education. Respect feels different in the room. It's lighter. A week later, Melissa came alone. "I've been looking at our own spending," she said, sitting across from me at the dining table. "We were living above our means." "Yes. I blamed you because it was easier than blaming ourselves." "That's often the case." She swallowed. "I told people you were confused." "I know. I'm calling each of them." "Why?" "Because the story needs to end properly. Narratives don't disappear unless corrected." Over the next month, I received calls again. Not cautious this time. Apologetic. "Tom, I'm sorry we believed that." "I understand," I replied each time. Understanding does not equal forgetting. By Christmas, Daniel had repaid nearly $15,000. It would take years to finish. I didn't mind. Discipline builds character slowly. On Christmas Eve, Emily handed me a small envelope. Inside was a printed spreadsheet. "What's this?" I asked. "Dad's repayment tracker," she said. "I'm keeping him honest." I smiled. "So am I." She looked at me carefully. "Are you proud of him?" That question required precision. "I'm proud that he's trying." She nodded. "That's different than before." "Yes," I said, "it is." After dinner, Daniel lingered by the fireplace. "I've been thinking," he began. "That's good." He managed a small laugh. "I kept saying I was protecting you, but really, I was protecting my pride. Pride costs more than money. I couldn't admit I failed," he continued, "so I made you look weak instead." I didn't interrupt. "And when the bank froze access, I told myself you overreacted, but the truth is you didn't." "No," I said quietly, "I didn't." He looked at the floor. "I'm sorry for saying you weren't safe." That was the first time he used the exact phrase. Words matter when they return unchanged. "I forgive you," I said. He exhaled slowly. "But forgiveness doesn't restore authority," I added. "Trust does." "I know." And this time, I believed he did. In January, I scheduled another meeting with Elaine, my attorney. Daniel joined me. I want to amend my estate documents, I said calmly. Daniel stiffened slightly. I'm naming Emily as co-successor trustee, alongside a neutral fiduciary. He looked surprised. You don't trust me. I trust the man you're becoming, I replied, but structure prevents pressure. He considered that. That's fair, he said finally. Fairness is not punishment, it's clarity. Elaine finalized the amendment. Daniel signed acknowledgement of the change, without argument. That mattered more than any apology. By spring, repayment reached $25,000. Slow, steady. Each deposit recorded. Each balance updated. We spoke weekly now. Not about control. About budgeting. About investments. About avoiding leverage without collateral. Sometimes he asked advice before making decisions. That was new. One afternoon in early April, I slipped on the front steps after a rainstorm. Nothing serious. A bruised elbow and injured pride. Daniel arrived within 15 minutes. Not with paperwork. Not with warnings. Just concern. Do you need ice? He asked. Yes. He helped me to the couch and sat quietly while I applied the compress. I was wrong, he said again, softer this time, about everything. I didn't respond immediately. Repetition doesn't strengthen sincerity. Consistency does. Over the next months, nothing dramatic happened. And that was the point. No more transfers. No more narratives. No more whispers about confusion. Just routine. Routine is underrated. It builds stability quietly. By the end of the year, Daniel had repaid $38,000. Still short. Still accountable. We attended Thanksgiving together. No tension this time. When someone asked about my finances, Daniel answered calmly. Dad handles everything, he said, better than any of us. Simple. Accurate. Emily caught my eye across the table and smiled. After dinner, she pulled me aside. You know what I learned from all this? She asked. What? Never sign something just because someone says it's for your own good. I laughed softly. That's a useful lesson. And always check the numbers. Yes, I agreed. Always check the numbers. When people ask me now whether I regret signing that power of attorney, I tell them no. Because the document didn't create the problem. It revealed it. Authority doesn't corrupt by itself. It exposes character. Daniel's character faltered under pressure. Then it rebuilt under accountability. That's the part people miss. Vindication isn't about punishment. It's about clarity. The bank froze his access. Not because I shouted. Not because I demanded it. Because documentation didn't lie. If someone tells you they're protecting your money, ask what protection requires. Ask who benefits. Ask for transparency. And remember this. Trust is given freely. Authority is documented. But dignity must always remain yours. Even if someone you love forgets that for a while.